Today's review is going to be on a Ruger Gen 2 and 6.5 Grendel. It's the Ranch Edition with a 16-inch threaded fluted barrel, and we'll start with the magazine test. Alright, so magazine considerations with the Ruger Gen 2 is going to be important for each user. I intend to hunt hogs with this rifle, so having more than 10 rounds on board would be beneficial. So here I'm just seeing how each of the various magazines fit into the mag well. I did have some challenges in getting the bolt to run smoothly over these extended capacity magazines. So in the case of the ASC magazine here, it was catching on the back end of the follower shape there. And then with this Unimag, it was actually catching on the part of the magazine that would push up on a semi-auto's bolt catch. So not so much the follower, but as you'll see here in just a second, that bolt was catching on this yellow part. So I may take a Dremel to these. Regardless, the rifle ships with a nice 10-round Duramag that seem to offer the smoothest bolt cycling. So up next, I grabbed some ammunition to load. Unfortunately, I chose what could be a discontinued load from Federal American Eagle. I can't seem to find it anywhere in stock. So all the accuracy testing for this range visit is going to be with this particular ammunition. But anyhow, I've got both magazines loaded up with 20 rounds, and now I'm going to go through inserting the magazines into the mag well. And as you can see, I have some swell at 20 rounds or more on these extended capacities, which makes it a little difficult and challenging. They won't drop free, but loading these magazines full up causes the feed lips to expand outward. This doesn't happen so much with the 10 round because it's not so much force on the magazine spring and the body of the magazine, but as you can see, I'm having a real fun time here with this ASC magazine. It's probably the easier of the two extended capacity magazines to work with, but as you see, you rip the magazine free from the mag well and a round pops free. So let's see, no better luck with the Unimag that I'm going to grab here in just a second. Okay, here's the 10 rounder. It drops free. Obviously, I'll load that one up in a few minutes here. So here's the Unimag. It swells a lot, so I have the most difficulty. And these aren't flared mag wells like you'd have with a semi-auto, so the contour of it is you got to hit it just right. And there goes another round, ripping the magazine out. So, haven't quite decided which magazine to run yet. When I go in the field, maybe I'll load them only with 15 rounds. It'll still be more than 10. But here I intend to go ahead and work the action in a safe manner at the range, off a bench. So I'm positioning the gun to where that magazine isn't getting hung on the table. And again, this is the Unimag. So I'm going to attempt to cycle the full 20 rounds. The Gen 2 action is not the smoothest. It's far better than the Generation 1 Ruger Americans that had that zipper sound and maybe a little harsher bolt finish than the Gen 2s. But by no means is this your smoothest action on the market. So getting a knack for what angle to throw that bolt up at. Here I have a stoppage. Hard to say what caused it. It was on the 19th of 20 cycles. It seems like the round would come up from the magazine but then get caught low going into the chamber. Try to give you a better look here. So the bolt is actually overriding the case, the base of the case did not go into the bolt as it should have, and then there's no re-racking that. You're going to have to dump the magazine to get that round out. Alright, so transitioning away from the Unimag, I'm going to try the ASC Stoner Mag next. I've got it loaded with about 20 rounds. And insert's fine. And what I'm attempting to do is impart the same cyclical action to each round. Nothing too aggressive, nothing too soft, but I'm trying to be consistent in how I rack the rounds to see if I can somewhat get to the root of some of the stoppages. I don't know what that was about right there. Just didn't seem, the geometry within doesn't seem to let a round out every once in a while. But other than that inconsistency, the ASC Stoner Mag didn't have any of those bolt override stoppages. And next I'll go with the Duramag that was provided with the rifle. It's a 10 round. And this one does not drop free unless you give it a little bit of encouragement. I would like to see those mags drop free. And we get all the way down to the final round in this 10 rounder, and there it is. Don't have an explanation. I think I was pretty consistent in my racking of the bolt, but again, the same condition where the case does not go into the bolt face. It instead is too low, and then when you back it out, it's just not going to feed, so you're going to have to dump the round. So that concludes the magazine test. We'll get on to accuracy shooting next. Alright, so I'm going to begin with shooting the Ruger Gen 2 Ranch rifle in 6.5 Grendel with the factory muzzle brake in place. I do not intend to use it, however I wanted to see what the felt recoil impulse was like, as well as the side blast concussion and gases, how they dispersed out of the factory muzzle brake. So I don't actually record the target for the factory muzzle brake, but it was consistent with what you'll see with the next few series of muzzle devices attached to the gun, which is about an inch with the 90 grain TNT ammunition. So, you know, Grendel in and of itself is not a heavy recoiling round, and with this pepper pot style compact muzzle brake, there really isn't a recoil concern. So follow-up shots ought to be easy enough to handle. I am concerned with the shooters next to me that they not be blasted with the concussion of the gases coming out from this type of muzzle brake. So you'll see in the next shooting sequence what I'm going to aim to do with that. So that was the factory muzzle attachment. Alright, so here's the factory pepper pot brake, and this is a brand I've used before. You can see it's about twice the length of the factory. Same style and concept of design in terms of recoil mitigation and those gases going out to the side. So I'll screw this on, and then what this brake allows me to do is add a blast deflector. So all those gases eventually will be contained and thrown forward so that the shooters to my side don't get peppered with concussion. So we'll start the accuracy using the base pepper pot of this style muzzle device. Alright, so the aftermarket pepper pot style muzzle brake will take 5 shots at 100 yards. No stoppages with the 10 round Duramag. The recoil is about the same as the factory, but the gas concussion is a bit more. I have more coming back almost to where the scope, the mid body of the scope. So this pepper pot has smaller holes right as the bullet exits the muzzle, and then the larger holes consistent with Ruger's factory towards the end. So it's progressive hole sizes along this pepper pot design. But overall, same concept, same function as the factory, just threaded for a blast deflector. So we'll see what the target looks like, and then we'll move on. Alright, so I'll affix the blast deflector onto the end of the pepper pot aftermarket muzzle device, and checking the barrel for temp. The whole point to my concept of getting this rifle with the 16-inch barrel was to keep weight to a minimum. So this is going to be the final configuration of the rifle. I will shoot with a suppressor on it next, but for weight considerations, I don't feel like this adds a significant amount of weight over the factory muzzle device, and it's going to save the shooters in my shooting party from the concussion. It does add a direct rearward recoil feel to the rifle, so I would say it's now like where you'd expect maybe 308 to start on the recoil impulse, but follow-up shots should still not be a problem. So let's check the target after 5 shots with the blast deflector. Alright, so finally here I put my suppressor on. It's an OSS Helix 762 model, and I mean, I always reserve the right to put my suppressor on at any given hunt or time that I feel like I want absolute sound suppression and minimum recoil. The gun is very manageable, balance is good. Now you'll see on the upcoming targets that point of impact does shift through the progression of the extended pepper pot with no blast shield, with blast shield, and then putting the suppressor on. So I'll make note of that here in a second. But overall, very impressed with the Ruger Gen 2's accuracy in 6.5 Grendel. Not so impressed with the feeding from even the provided magazine. It really takes concerted effort to get those rounds to feed. So after a few hunts, hopefully that settles in. Here's the target from the suppressor. And then starting at the left on the black was the extended pepper pot with no blast shield, the middle with blast shield, far right suppressor, and point of impact shifts of 2 inches roughly by adding the weight to each of those. Thanks for watching.